Okay, good morning, everyone. I'll officially get started by just welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap. Welcome to Wat Tung. Sawadee Kap. This is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday we get together and I share with you guys the teachings of the Buddha. This is a very nice foundational program. It's actually a 7-month program, and we're kind of in the middle of it right now. We share this here at the temple at 9 a.m. in the morning, and I even live stream it as well. So welcome to all of you guys that are online that are joining us as well. And then I also teach these same classes at 9 p.m. Thai time as well on Sunday and Wednesday. So no matter where you are, there should be a live class in your time zone. And then they're also recorded to be able to watch even if you can't make the live class. So welcome to everyone here at the temple. And welcome to all of you guys online. Today's topic is what is Kamma and how does it affect me? This is chapter 9 of our book. We use volume 1 of this book series titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. The title of this book is called Developing a Life Practice. This is a foundational text to help you develop your life practice. And this program goes chapter by chapter each Sunday over a 7-month period. And then we repeat this program, and it's on a repetitive schedule where every 7 months we're starting it over and over and over. And I've taught it about 6 or 7 times now. So we're about halfway through this program, and we're studying this topic of Kamma, or some people might refer to it as karma. This is the same exact thing, referring to the same thing, just a different language, whether it's Sanskrit or the Pali language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so the people who study the original teachings of the Buddha will usually use the word Kamma. We start our classes with meditation to help you guys learn meditation and train your mind. So I'm going to start with breathing mindfulness meditation, and then afterwards we'll move into studying what is Kamma and how does it affect me. So if you would like to take a position, either seated on the floor or in a chair, whatever's comfortable for you. Those of you guys online, same thing. You can sit however you like. There's actually 4 positions to meditate in. They're seated, lying, standing, and walking. But usually when you're first learning, seated works out really well. So if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear with your legs lightly crossed. Some people like to have multiple cushions under their rear. This gives you the ability to have a lesser angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and allows the circulation to flow. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And if this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way, because everybody's body is a little bit different, and you're going to find different things are comfortable. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. It's whatever comfortable for you. So with your lower body and your hands and arms comfortable, the next thing you would like to look at is the upper body. You would like this to be erect, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be kind of dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind would have a tendency to be overactive and uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect so the mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation, and you can actively train the mind during the meditation session. I'm going to lead into the meditation with some chanting. If you would like to see what these chants are, there's laminated sheets on the table over there that you're welcome to get those. You'll see that they're in the Pali language. This is the original source language of the teachings of the Buddha. And I even have the English translations on there too, so you can see what the chants are. These aren't rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students commit his teachings to memory. So he would teach, and then every 2 weeks they would do chanting as a way to recite the teachings and commit them to memory, because nothing was written down during his lifetime. It wasn't until after his death that they wrote things down. So there's nothing mystical or magical about this chanting. It really is just to ease the mind into meditation, because we don't need to chant in order to remember the teachings anymore. We have books, we have videos, podcasts, all kinds of ways of capturing the teachings. So if you guys would like to see those chants that we're going to be doing, you're welcome to get that sheet over there, and you're even welcome to chant along. There's various courses and retreats where I actually teach students how to do the actual chanting. If you see the words to the chanting, I suspect the Buddha actually didn't even create these chants. I suspect that his students created them, either during his life or after his death, because there's a lot of respect and admiration and gratitude for him in these chants. And the Buddha doesn't walk around teaching people to bow down to him and chant to him, because he would have eliminated his ego and his arrogance as a way of getting to enlightenment. An enlightened being doesn't have ego or arrogance or pride. They don't judge each other other and put yourself above people or below people. They just look at everyone as being equal. So when you see these chants, if you look at them, you'll see a lot of respect and a lot of gratitude for the Buddha. In this enlightened mental state that he guided people to experience, where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, no longer experiencing discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. If you learned with a teacher like the Buddha, who didn't want anything from you, he didn't expect anything from you, he just helped you move from this anger and sadness and frustration and guilt and shame and fear and all these other discontent feelings to this mind where it's peaceful and joyful. And he just did this out of the generosity of his heart and with compassion and loving kindness. You probably have a lot of respect for him too. So that's the reason why the people, I suspect, created these chants. So I'm going to ease us into meditation with the chanting. Then I'm going to provide some guidance where we'll all just have our eyes closed, and I'll be providing guidance on how to do the meditation. And then after I provide guidance, as we're meditating together, then there'll just be a period of time where we'll just all be meditating together. Those of us here at the temple and those of you online will just all be meditating, and you'll hear noises here and there. You'll hear a car or a bird or maybe a dog or something like that. But all these sounds are impermanent. You just bring your mind back to the breath. You'll hear me guide you in the meditation of how to actually do this. And after we meditate for a period of time, then I'll use chanting to ease us out of meditation. And before we move into our topic today, which is what is Kamma and how does it affect me? So if you guys would like to make yourself comfortable, make yourself comfortable. For those of you guys that haven't been here before, there's a bathroom in the back of the room, the very last door. You're welcome to use the bathroom at any time. You can just get up and go use it. There's even water that students provide as part of the donations that they provide. They give us this water so that you guys can be refreshed. So you're welcome to have some water if you like. So make yourself comfortable, and I'll just ease us into meditation and then provide you some guidance after the chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakhato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavito Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang โหโตภะคะวาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. I'm just here for guidance. This is your practice. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Just wherever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันทังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมโมโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวาปมานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. This meditation that we just did is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a primary form of training that the Buddha used in order to move his mind closer and closer to enlightenment and actually attain enlightenment. Enlightenment is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It no longer experiences any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You're no longer even experiencing a bad mood. You're always in a good mood. And this meditation is part of the training that you need in order to accomplish that, but there's other things you need as well. This meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. That's not the actual goal. Sometimes people think that's the goal based on the instruction and guidance, but the goal is to be able to build mindfulness or awareness of mind, to build concentration where you have focus and clarity of mind, and to be able to easily let things go and come back. Because the mind in the unenlightened state, it craves permanence. It's longing, it's yearning, it's craving, it's wanting things. And if you get the things that you want, you experience pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, you might get angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or some other painful feeling. The unenlightened mind is actually causing its own discontent feelings. In the unenlightened state, we typically blame the anger and sadness or whatever feelings you might be feeling, like frustration, irritation, agitation, or annoyance. Those are usually blamed on other people, or they're blamed on the situation. But you can see through the teachings of the Buddha and through your own reflection that your mind is actually causing these feelings itself. That the anger and sadness and frustration and all these discontent feelings, your mind's causing it itself. And this is why you can actually eliminate it. But you need to know how to do that. You need the wisdom. And that's what the Buddhist teachings are doing, is giving you that wisdom of how to actually train your mind and eliminate these discontent feelings. So the teachings of the Buddha, they're not about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning his teachings now. You're reflecting on them now to independently verify that they're true, and you're practicing them now. And because you're learning now, reflecting now, and practicing now, you're experiencing the results now in this life. You're experiencing the peace and the joy come into the mind, to the point where you'll notice that it's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you haven't experienced any anger, sadness, or frustration or other discontent feelings, and you'll know your mind is enlightened. But it takes gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress to be able to experience that. Sometimes people think that the Buddha meditated under a tree and he instantly got to enlightenment. So they put a lot of emphasis on meditation, but this isn't actually true. If you learn the teachings of the Buddha, he talks about gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And he says clearly that it wasn't instantaneous that he attained enlightenment. And you know this to be true because everything you've ever done in life has been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Whether it's learning English, whether it's learning some job or occupation, or anything you've done in your life, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress where you've gradually acquired wisdom. And that's what you're doing on the path to enlightenment, is gradually acquiring wisdom through not believing the teachings. So even the topic we're going to be discussing today, the natural law of Kamma, or some people refer to it as karma, you don't believe this natural law that I'm going to teach you. You learn it, you reflect on it, and then you practice it to be able to see the truth for yourself. And I'm going to guide you in being able to do that as we explore today's topic. You've done this same thing with other aspects of your life where when we were all born, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. So with the natural law of gravity, this natural law affected us whether we were aware of it or not. And we struggled and had difficulties with this natural law because we didn't have wisdom of this natural law. So we made unwise decisions that produced unwholesome results for us. And then slowly but surely, gradual training, gradual practice, gradual progress, we saw the truth for ourselves that this natural law of gravity is true. And we learned how to make wise decisions that produced wholesome results. We started tying our shoes better. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk as we traveled through the world. We learned how to ride a bike and climb a ladder, get on an airplane. And now we fully awoke to the wisdom of this natural law of gravity. And we no longer struggle with this natural law anymore. We don't cry. We don't get upset like we did when we were a child, falling down, hitting our head, breaking our toys, things like this. Instead, with this new wisdom, you now understand the world around you a bit better, and you can function more with ease based on this natural law of gravity. Well, this natural law of Kamma that I'm going to be teaching you guys about today, it's the same thing, that you need to gradually awaken to this natural law and start to understand it in a way that you can see the truth for yourself. And as you awaken to the wisdom of this natural law, you won't struggle and have difficulties anymore. There's these various natural laws that the Buddha taught. I call them the natural laws of existence, namely this natural law of Kamma. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha, is understanding this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decisions, that everything that you experience in life is a result of your decisions. And when you have a lack of wisdom of this natural law of Kamma, you will naturally make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results, or you'll be confronting a certain decision that you need to make, and you'll really struggle and have difficulties because of the lack of wisdom of this natural law. Because this natural law is affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. Just like the natural law of gravity, it's affecting you. So if you understand this natural law and you can independently verify it and see the wisdom in it, not believe it, but actually understand it Now you can make wise decisions that are going to lead to wholesome results. So everything the Buddha taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law. He's teaching you this natural law all the way through his teachings, whether it's the Eightfold Path, which is a core central teaching of the Buddha that I shared in this program and others, whether it's the 5 precepts, which we learned just a couple of weeks ago. Those teachings are explaining to you this natural law of Kamma, of cause and effect, and helping you see wise decision making that's going to produce wholesome results. But now what we're going to do today is we're going to dive in and actually explore this natural law itself. Even though as you've been learning the teachings of the Buddha, if you've been learning them with me using the original words of the Buddha, he's exposing you to the natural law of Kamma all the way through his teachings. He's helping you understand certain pollutions that are in your mind. These are called the 10 fetters. These 10 pollutions are hindering you from being able to experience that peace and joy that is the enlightened mind. So he's guiding you to understand this natural law of Kamma, of cause and effect, or action and result, so you can eradicate these pollutions from the mind through training the mind. And then the brightness and the radiance of the enlightened mind can shine through, where you can experience peace and joy, this calmness, the serenity, the contentedness. You can experience focus, concentration, clarity of mind, this deep memory. You can experience the blossoming of your personal and professional relationships, because there's probably certain relationships right now where there's a bit of harshness or roughness in your relationships. And when you clear out the pollution of your mind, you'll learn how to be able to be loving and kind and compassionate in all your various relationships. As I mentioned, you can get to a point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore, and you can observe the quality of your mind gradually improving. And it comes with learning about this natural law. So this natural law is affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. There's no being that is overseeing this natural law. It's not like there's an entity or a being that's deciding who gets the Kamma and who doesn't. Instead, it's a result of your decisions. There's nobody controlling this. There's not one central being that is controlling this natural law of Kamma. This natural law of Kamma, it happens based on your own intentions, your speech, and your actions. We're going to dive into it in much more detail today, but let me just share this with you generally, that you can see right now for yourself. That when you're polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to people, and that's your choice, people tend to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to you. That's your Kamma. As a result of your decision to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, people are polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to you. And then conversely, when you're impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, people tend to be that way with you. That's the results of your decisions. Nobody's controlling that. It's not punishments and rewards. It's not mystical and magical. It's not who's at fault. It's not about who to blame. That's not what the natural law of Kamma is. It's helping you to see this causality of this causal relationship of cause and effect, or action and result, that when you make wise decisions, it produces wholesome results. And when you make unwise decisions, it produces unwholesome results. So your wholesome Kamma are the wholesome results of your decisions, of your wise decisions. Your unwholesome Kamma is the unwholesome results of your unwise decisions. So it's not a system of punishments and rewards, or about who's at fault or who's at blame. It's about seeing this sequencing of events and how one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And when you understand the wisdom of what leads to wholesome results in your life, you're going to naturally make wise decisions. But when you lack wisdom, you're going to inadvertently make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. And like I mentioned, typically in the unenlightened state, when we experience certain unwholesome results in our life, we typically blame other people, and we think it's everyone else's fault that we're experiencing something unwholesome. But when you accept responsibility for what you're experiencing in life, this is very empowering, because then you can change anything that you find that you don't particularly like about what's going on in your life. When you accept responsibility for what's going on, then that means it's just a matter of finding the wisdom to make different decisions and improve the results that you're experiencing. Whereas if it's other people's fault of what you're experiencing in life, and you're blaming other people, then you can't create a better life for yourself, because it's everyone else that's causing these difficulties. Or if what you're experiencing in life, if it's destiny or if it's fate, then that means your life is pre-programmed and you can't do anything to change your life. This isn't the truth. This is what some people believe because of belief. But with belief, you don't know what's true or false. But if you investigate this natural law of Kamma, you can see the truth for yourself, that everything you experience is a result of your decisions, and you can actually improve your decision making with wisdom and experience wholesome results. So if we think that our life has fate or destiny, then basically we're locked in. We can't change anything. Or if we think we have good luck and bad luck and that everything's about luck, then again, we're subjected to whatever our luck is. But when you see the cause and effect relationship based on this natural law of Kamma, then it's just a matter of cultivating the wisdom that you need, make improved decisions, and you'll experience improved results. So this natural law of Kamma, it's not mystical or magical. It's not a black cloud that's following you around. It's just seeing this causal relationship, this causality of cause and effect. So here's just kind of a summary of what I essentially just shared, is that this natural law of Kamma is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's your life, your decisions, and your results. Everything you experience is a result of your decision. You may not see that right now at this moment, but as we go through our discussion today and I share more and more about this natural law with you, let me know if you're having challenges to see this, and I will help you. You can ask any and all questions as we go. Those of you guys here at the temple, I have microphones here in this little bowl. You can use those to ask questions. That way the people online can hear you. There's just a little switch on the front that you turn it on, and then the people online will be able to hear. And for those of you guys online, you can either put your question into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So let me share with you guys more about this natural law of Kamma using some of the words of the Buddha. Remember, everything the Buddha taught, typically in one way or another, is coming back to this natural law of Kamma, but I'm just going to share with you two particular things that he shared to illustrate two specific points about the natural law of Kamma. So this book series that I share, these 13 books, in one way or another, it's all related to the natural law of Kamma. There's actually one book of the series that's dedicated to the natural law of Kamma, but here's just two little teachings related to the natural law of Kamma to illustrate two important points as you get started understanding this natural law. He says, beings are the owners of their Kamma, the heirs of their Kamma. They have Kamma as their origin, Kamma as their relative, Kamma as their resort. Whatever Kamma they do, wholesome or unwholesome, they are its heirs. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, some people use the word karma. This is the Sanskrit version. It's just a different language referring to the same natural law. If you study the original teachings of the Buddha, it's in the Pali language. So this word kamma is used. If this word kamma translated to one English word, I would just use that English word because it would be much easier. Everything that I teach, except for two words, are in English, but there's two words that don't translate to one English word, so I still need to use those Pali words, and Kamma is one of those. So this is cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. So what the Buddha is saying is, you're going to experience the results of your decisions, whether it's wholesome or unwholesome. Whatever decisions you make, wise or unwise, you're going to experience the results of that. Nobody else can make Kamma for you. It's only your decisions that are producing Kamma. It's not everyone else's decisions producing Kamma for you. It's your decisions that produce the Kamma. It's not somebody else that's doing it to you or for you. So your decisions produce your Kamma. So that's why I share, it's your life, your decisions, your results. It's your Kamma. And this is what the Buddha is saying in order to help you see that you are the owner of your Kamma. Then he says, the result of Kamma, I say, is threefold, to be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. That some subsequent occasion is some future rebirth beyond the next one. So even the cycle of rebirth can be independently verified. This may not be something that you understand right now or have the wisdom to independently verify at this moment. But if you go deeper into the path to enlightenment and you explore the teachings, you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth and see that we've all experienced countless rebirths in the past, and you will experience continuous rebirths in the future if one doesn't actually get to enlightenment. But the cycle of rebirth was never used by the Buddha as a way of guilting, shaming, or fearing you into learning his teachings. He's just explaining the natural laws of what's truly happening so that you can understand. And then there's certain aspects of the cycle of rebirth that actually help you to be able to understand what you're experiencing in this life. So what he's saying in this second phrase here is he's basically saying you can't run and hide from your Kamma. Whatever you experience, whatever decisions you make, you're going to experience the results of that, either in this life or some future life. You can't run and hide from it. So here with these two statements, he's saying you create all your own Kamma and you can't run and hide from it, essentially is what he's saying. So when you understand that, then the next decision that you might come to is, well, let me figure out how to create only wholesome Kamma. Because if I'm creating this Kamma, if I'm creating the results of my decisions and I can't run and hide from any unwise decisions that's producing unwholesome Kamma, then how can I create wholesome Kamma? Through making wise decisions. So that's what I'm going to teach you now. There's these 4 types of Kamma that you need to learn about in order to understand this natural law of Kamma. There's wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma. And then there's old Kamma and there's new Kamma. And I'm going to share this with you, and then I'm going to give you examples to help you understand this so you can see it in your own life, because you're not believing what I share. Don't believe what I'm teaching you. Don't believe what's in the books that I write. Don't believe anything that I share or anybody else shares. You're on your own independent journey to get to wisdom, and you need to be able to see the truth through learning, reflecting, and practicing. So here I'm going to help you learn. And then as you're learning, you start reflecting and trying to independently verify that. And then as you do, you start practicing it and be able to see the truth more and more. So this wholesome Kamma, or the wholesome results of your decisions, that's what the word Kamma is this wholesome results of your decisions. This is when you make decisions that are harmless. When you're making decisions that don't cause harm to this being who you are now and to other beings, when you're making wise decisions that doesn't cause harm, that's harmless, this is going to produce wholesome Kamma. It's going to produce wholesome results because it's harmless. You're making harmless decisions. So for example, you're sitting here right now at the temple or at home, just listening to somebody talk. You're not causing any harm whatsoever. This is a harmless decision. So that's why it's producing wholesome results for you. There's no harm that's coming to you right now. You're experiencing only wholesome Kamma because you're not causing any harm. You're making a harmless decision, so therefore wholesome Kamma is being generated. And not only are you not experiencing any harm, you're actually getting benefit because you're learning about these teachings that are going to ultimately help you in life. Then there's unwholesome Kamma, which are harmful decisions. These are decisions you make that are harmful, either to this being who you are or to other beings. When you make harmful decisions, then you're going to experience the unwholesome results of those decisions, the unwholesome Kamma. The unwholesome Kamma is the unwholesome results of your unwise decisions. So for example, a couple of weeks ago, we studied the 5 precepts. In those 5 precepts, we learned about killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and taking substances that cause heedlessness. These are all harmful decisions. If you make these decisions and you kill or you steal or you have sexual misconduct, you lie, you take intoxicants, and we explored this in detail because it's not black and white. You need to be able to see the words of the Buddha on these teachings and then explore it in detail. I talked about this in an entire class and we looked at a lot of different examples. But if you're making a decision that is harmful, those are some of those decisions that you might make that are harmful, then this unwholesome Kamma is going to come back to you, or the unwholesome results of your decisions. Or say when you talk to your friends or your family or your coworkers or your neighbors, say you talk harsh. You're very harsh in your speech. Maybe your tone, your tempo, or your word choice is harsh and aggressive. That's unwise of you. And now you're going to experience the unwholesome results, that your relationships are going to struggle. So the Buddha teaches you to improve the way you speak to people in your communication. He provides things like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, that you speak at the right time, what you say is true, you speak gentle, you speak beneficially, and you speak with a mind of loving kindness. This is what we explored back at the Eightfold Path. We explored right speech. And there's other teachings that I've been helping students to learn all the way through in our books and our classes and retreats and courses that are exposing you to this natural law of Kamma in one way or another. Because when you're making unwise decisions, it's causing harm to individuals or to you. And now this harmful result of your decisions is coming back to you. This is called unwholesome Kamma, or the unwholesome results of your unwise decisions. And the Buddha is sharing that with you. He's not trying to convince you to do anything. He's not giving you rules or commandments or anything like that. He's just exposing you to this natural law of Kamma so you can see the truth for yourself of what leads to wholesome results in your life. And then you make whatever decisions you like. He already accomplished that peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. And then he dedicated the remaining time of his life from the age of 35 to 80 to be able to share with you what he did in order to get to that enlightened mental state. And you can choose to learn that and understand it and practice it if you like, and experience the same qualities of mind that he did. So understanding wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma is an important part of this, because as long as you're making unwise decisions that are harmful to other beings, and this harm is coming back to you, you would find it very challenging to ever get to a peaceful and joyful mind or a peaceful and joyful life, because all this harm is coming back to you based in the things that you're deciding to do. So if you can awaken to the wisdom of what it takes to make wise decisions and produce wholesome results, you can see the results for yourself, that your life is becoming more and more peaceful and more joyful, and your mind's becoming more peaceful and joyful because you're not struggling anymore in the decisions that you're making, because you understand the natural law of Kamma. Every decision that you put out, it's either going to be wise or unwise. And it's going to produce either wholesome Kamma or unwholesome Kamma. So you would like to really slow down your decision making when you're challenged and you're struggling. Get some guidance on what is the natural law of Kamma and make wise decisions for yourself. It's your life, it's your decisions, but you might seek guidance from a teacher when you're meeting with any particular impactful decisions. This is one of the things you do with a Buddhist teacher, is you can reach out either by asking questions in classes, by posting in a Facebook group, by sending private messages or scheduling personal guidance. You can actually get help on your journey to enlightenment. So you're not only reading books, coming to classes, meditating and things like this, but you can also be reaching out for personal guidance to get help along the way so that you can gradually awaken to the natural law of Kamma based on individual experiences that you have in life. So this next part of the natural law of Kamma is understanding old Kamma and new Kamma. What old Kamma is any decisions that you've made in the past that you're experiencing the results of those now in the present moment. And then new Kamma is any decisions you're making now that you're going to experience the results in the future. So let me give you an example. Say in the past, 3 years ago, I might have filled out a government form to report my income. And when I reported my income, I lied. And now 3 years later, the government has discovered that lie. And now I get a notice in the mail that says you owe $3,000. There's $1,000 that you owe us originally. There's $1,000 penalty, and there's $1,000 of interest. And now you owe $3,000. And you're getting that notice right now in the present moment. Even if you're deciding to learn the teachings of the Buddha, you're going to experience the unwholesome results of your decisions from the past, that you've made unwise decisions. So now I'm getting this notice now. This is an old Kamma from a decision I made in the past. But now in the present moment, I have some decisions to make. What do I do with this? I could continue to lie and be deceitful and try to run from this. That would be unwise, because we know we can't run from our Kamma. We can't hide from it. So it would be unwise to continue to lie. Or what I could do is I could call up the government, take responsibility for it, say, yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize. I did this, I had a lapse of judgment. I really apologize, and take responsibility for it and say, hey, I'd like to pay this back, but I don't have $3,000 right now. And now, because you take responsibility for it, maybe the government says, you know what, we're going to reduce the penalties, we're going to reduce the interest, and now you only owe us $1,000 or $1,200 or what have you. And now maybe you work out a payment plan to be able to pay this back and resolve this issue. You extinguish this unwholesome Kamma. You eliminate this unwholesome Kamma. This is old Kamma that is unwholesome, and now you extinguish it, right? So there's certain things that we've been doing all throughout our life where we've been creating unwholesome karma without realizing it. Because with a lack of wisdom of this natural law, you will make unwise decisions that are producing unwholesome results. So all throughout your life, as you lack wisdom of this natural law, it's like taking a garden hose and putting mud into this garden hose. And this garden hose now has mud in the garden hose. And what you're doing when you're learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha is it's like taking your garden hose and hooking it up to a faucet, and you turn on the water and try to get this fresh water to come through the garden hose. Well, if you're coming to the temple once a year, if you're meditating once a week or once a month, you've got like a little drip going through this garden hose that's packed up with mud. But if you open up that faucet wider and wider, you're coming regularly to the temple, you're reading books, you're meditating daily, you're consulting with a teacher, getting guidance as you need, you got a lot of clean water coming through this garden hose. You're making a lot of wise decisions in your life through your relationships and all the various things that you're doing in life. Now you've got more wisdom, so there's a lot more clean water that you're putting into this garden hose. And it's going to flush out this mud over time, but it's going to take time. And as you're putting this clean water into the garden hose, it's going to spit mud for a while because we've put dirty water or dirty mud into this garden hose. So dirty water is going to come out for a period of time. But then eventually you're going to get some clean water. But then you're going to get some more mud. And then you're going to get some clean water and some clean water. But then you're going to get some more mud. But then you'll get a whole bunch of clean water, and then you'll get some mud and some mud. But slowly over time, as you put more and more wise decisions into your life, you'll clean it up. And now you'll got nothing but clean water coming out of this garden hose. You'll have nothing but wholesome results in your life because you're only making wise decisions based on this natural law of Kamma. So this is what you're looking to do on the path to enlightenment, is gain wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing, and getting to the point where now you can make wise decisions as much as possible all throughout your life until you fully awake to the wisdom of this natural law, and you're only making wise decisions that are producing wholesome results. And you flushed out all the old Kamma that is unwholesome. You've extinguished it. Okay? Any questions on what I'm sharing here so far? You guys can ask here at the temple. Remember, just use the microphone there. Or if you're online and you'd like to ask questions, you can just put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. Yes, sir, if you could use that microphone there. We have 2 microphones, so you guys can pass them around. There's a little gray switch on the front.
Okay, I heard about your example with gravity, which is something you learn when you're a child, where there's adults around you. I'm thinking about decisions that we need to make now as adults. We have no way of knowing the outcome of these decisions, and I was wondering if things like gut feelings or intuitions come into play are important when making these decisions at a later stage in life.
Okay, so when you lack wisdom of this natural law of Kamma, you don't have an idea of how a decision that you make is going to be experienced, what the results are going to be. But when you understand this natural law of Kamma and you practice it, you'll know what the results of the decisions that you're making are going to be, because you will know the result. You'll know this natural law of Kamma, and you'll know the decisions you're making, and you know what the results are going to be, essentially. And you'll get to the point where your mind is fully protected, that right now, if you make a decision, you might be a little bit fearful, or you might have a little bit of anxiety of knowing whether or not what's going to happen in a certain situation. But when you fully awake to the wisdom of this natural law, you'll know what's going to happen. You'll know that you're making a wise decision. You won't know 100% of exactly what's going to happen, but you know it's going to produce wholesome results for you because you have fully awoke to this wisdom. In terms of what we refer to as a gut instinct or intuition, I would call this wisdom, because the gut doesn't really have any kind of wisdom. It doesn't have the ability to make any decisions. instead, what we have is kind of like an inclination. We have a certain amount of wisdom in the unenlightened state, where we kind of think and we're kind of inclined to make certain decisions, and we're kind of leaning in that direction. But by the time you awake more and more to this natural law, you'll know with 100% certainty when something occurs. You'll know, like, okay, this is the way I should handle that. And there's always like 10, 20, 50, a million different answers that are going to produce certain wholesome results. And that's why all of us are unique. We're our own individuals. We'll make our own decisions. This isn't about everybody making exactly the same decision. It's about awakening to this wisdom. And then with the variables of each situation, you make the decision that's right for you in that situation. But then with the wisdom of this natural law, you'll make a wise decision. And there can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 different wise decisions. And your wise decision might be different than someone else's, but it will ultimately produce wholesome results. So this instinct or gut feeling that you're having, this is the mind has a certain amount of wisdom, but it's maybe just not sure 100% whether this would be wise or not. And by the time you pay attention to this natural law and you look at it closely and you're making wise decisions based on this natural law, you'll get to the point where it's not a gut instinct or intuition anymore. You know with 100% certainty this is what's wise. And then you'll make that decision, and you'll see that it'll produce wholesome results for you more and more in your life. You're welcome. I'm just going to look online here and see if we have any questions. Okay, we have a question on Facebook here. This is from Bruce. He says, if a harmful thought about someone or something arises, but we don't speak or act on the harmful thought, do we still experience negative karma because we allowed the negative thought to arise? So, of course, Bruce, you're using the word negative or karma, but I would say this is unwholesome karma. So the fact that you have a unwholesome thought that arises in the mind, this is actually your karma. And if you act upon it, you're producing more unwholesome karma. So the whole reason why a unwholesome thought will arise in the mind is because it still has pollution of the mind. It's still unenlightened. As long as there's craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind, which is something I taught last week, which is the 3 poisons, the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires, as long as you have the unwholesome roots in the mind, you will have unwholesome thoughts. But by the time you fully purify the mind and get to enlightenment, you will no longer have any unwholesome thoughts. So that unwholesome thought that's coming up in the mind, it is unwholesome karma because you have not yet extinguished the causes and conditions that are leading to these unwholesome thoughts, which are the craving, anger, and ignorance. And then by choosing not to act on that unwholesome thought, you're reducing and extinguishing your karma, which is very helpful. Whereas if you were to act on that unwholesome thought, now you're producing new karma that is unwholesome. So that should answer your question for you, Bruce. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So let's move on to the next part of what I'm sharing with you guys. This is how you produce unwholesome karma. This connects into our class from last week, because last week I taught the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. I explained what these 3 things are. And now I'm showing you the original words of the Buddha of what produces unwholesome karma. It's craving, anger, and ignorance. And I'm going to explain to you just generally what these 3 things are, because some of you guys weren't in that class last week. So what craving is this is the mind's longing and yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection. This is where the mind thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. This is where the mind in the unenlightened state has selfish desires. The mind just wants and wants and wants and wants and wants. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, then the mind moves to this anger or frustration or hatred or ill will or annoyance or some other discontent feeling like that, where the mind becomes bitter and harsh. And when that anger arises, the unenlightened mind falsely attributes that anger to something outside of yourself. You'll think that somebody else is causing you to be angry, and then you might push that person away. This is called aversion, where you falsely believe, you have the misunderstanding or the misperception that something outside of you is causing your anger. So you will typically push that person or push that situation away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't, because you just get irritated or annoyed or frustrated with something else. Because if you pushed a person out of your life and they are truly the problem, then that means you wouldn't get angry anymore. You wouldn't get frustrated anymore. But you keep getting angry. You keep getting frustrated and annoyed and irritated. That's how you know when you push people out of your life, that's not the true problem. The true problem is the craving. That's the true problem, the longing, the yearning, that when you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get the painful feelings. So if you keep falsely assuming and falsely believing, having the misunderstanding and misperception that the problem is outside of you, and you keep pushing people away, then the number of people that you can spend time with in your life becomes fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer, because people have to meet your expectations in order for you to decide to spend time with them and be friends with them. And your expectations keep growing, and now the number of people you can spend time with becomes fewer and fewer. So if you keep pushing people away thinking that that's the problem, you'll never actually solve the problem, because that's not the problem. Or the second thing you'll do when your cravings don't get fulfilled and this anger arises is you'll become bitter and harsh and hostile towards people with your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And then it'll damage your relationships, and people will choose to leave out of your life. Or the third thing that the unenlightened mind will do when there's craving in the mind and you're starting to experience painful feelings and you don't understand what those painful feelings are coming from, which is your own cravings, what you'll tend to do is the third thing is you might put your expectations on somebody and you try to control them to do things your way, because the unenlightened mind doesn't understand craving, but it understands if I can just get this person to do things my way, everything will feel great. You'll get those pleasant feelings because your cravings are being fulfilled. But the problem is that you can't control 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. It's just not possible. There's 8 billion people in this world, and you can't control them to do things your way. You would have to have a massive training program to train everyone in the world to do things your way. And there's people being born all the time. So you're going to really have to get started on that if that's going to solve your problem, to put your expectations on people. It just doesn't work, right? So if you push people away with thinking that they're causing your anger or annoyance or agitation, that doesn't work. If you become bitter and harsh and hostile, trying to fear people to do things your way, or you put your expectations on people, trying to control them to do things your way, none of that's working. That's why you keep getting irritated and annoyed over and over and over again. You've never solved this problem. But when you understand what the true problem is, which is the craving, and that this anger is arising because you're not getting your cravings fulfilled, then the Buddha gives you the tools and techniques of how to actually solve that. And that's how you're eliminating this third poison or this third unwholesome root, which is the ignorance, or the way that I like to refer to it is the unknowing of true reality. Nowadays, the word ignorance is kind of like a derogatory word. A Buddha or an enlightened being doesn't talk in derogatory ways to other people. So we use this word ignorance, which is really like confusion or misunderstanding or unknowing of true reality. Some people call it confusion, that the unenlightened mind is confused. It thinks that mom is causing you to be angry, or dad, or brothers, or sisters, or your children, or your life partner. The mind thinks that mom is making me angry, or brother is causing me to be annoyed. It's not true. It's your craving, it's your longing, it's your yearning, it's wanting things to be your way, not realizing that you can't get things your way all the time because of impermanence. The universal truth of impermanence is that nothing is steady and constant and fixed. You see this human body is constantly changing. It's not permanent. You see your bank account, it's not permanent. It goes up and down and up and down. You see your relationships are impermanent. People are constantly changing, coming in and out of your life. You see the weather is constantly changing. Everything around you is impermanent. But with this craving, or this selfish desires that are in the mind, it wants things to be permanent. The unenlightened mind wants things to be permanently your way. And when you don't get them your way, it moves to this anger. And this is all happening because of this unknowing of true reality, or this confusion, or this ignorance. So whenever you're making decisions through craving, which is like these selfish desires, whenever you're making decisions through anger, which is this bitterness and hostility and animosity, whenever you're making decisions through ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality, it's producing unwholesome results. So as long as your mind's polluted with craving, anger, and ignorance, you'll make unwise decisions, not realizing that you're making these unwise decisions, and it'll produce unwholesome results in your life. And the way to produce wholesome Kamma is the exact opposite. These are the words of the Buddha explaining to you that generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom are the exact opposites, or the antidotes. These are the wholesome roots. So when you transform your mind with the teachings of the Buddha, and you start practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, and now you make decisions through that, it will produce wholesome Kamma, or wholesome results. Because with craving, the mind becomes selfish. But the opposite of that is generosity, where you're giving and sharing and helping others with your time, effort, energy, and resources. The opposite of anger and bitterness and hostility is loving kindness. This is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, having this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then the opposite of ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, is to practice wisdom. And that's why I teach you, when you first start learning with me, to never believe anything I say, never believe anything that's in the books, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You need to get to wisdom. You need to be able to see the truth for yourself. And you get to that through learning, through reflecting to independently verify the teachings, and then practicing the teachings. That's how you get to wisdom, because then you see the truth for yourself. So when you make decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, now you'll produce wholesome results, or wholesome Kamma. So here's how you eliminate your unwholesome Kamma based on the teachings of the Buddha. The first thing is you need to learn the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. I taught this at the beginning of this group learning program in a 3-part series. I broke it down piece by piece. It's 8 individual steps. I taught it in 3 classes: the wisdom section, the moral conduct section, and the mental discipline section. And then I taught it again as part of chapter 4 and chapter 5. I taught it again. And then as you learn in various courses and retreats, and if you'd like to read the books or videos, all these things are recorded. If you didn't participate to learn the Eightfold Path, you can still learn it now if you like. Because there's options for you to be able to learn this. The Eightfold Path is 8 individual steps that you're learning, you're reflecting on, and you're practicing, and you're dialing this into your life closer and closer to be able to develop your life practice. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha. It is the path to enlightenment. So when we talk about the path to enlightenment, it's the Eightfold Path that is the path to enlightenment. If you think about a speaker system, which we have one here, if you have speakers and you're trying to get this beautiful sound out of the speakers, you might have a certain device with all these dials, and you're trying to dial these 8 dials in to get the better and better quality sound out of these speakers. Well, the same thing is true about your mind and about your life, that this Eightfold Path are like 8 individual dials that you're dialing in closer and closer to be able to get this better and better quality mind and this better and better quality life, where your mind can perform optimally with focus, concentration, clarity, and wisdom, and having this deep memory. Because as long as the mind's polluted with these pollutions that the Buddha discovered, the mind won't perform optimally. This is why you might lack concentration, or you might have a lack of memory in certain situations, or a lack of focus, because the mind has certain pollutions that it's inhibited from having this clarity and this focus and this concentration. But as you eliminate and eradicate the pollutions of your mind, you'll notice that the concentration and focus and memory, this clarity of mind, comes into your mind more and more profoundly because you've eliminated more and more of this pollution. So it's the Eightfold Path that's going to teach you how to eliminate those pollutions of the mind. And as you practice that more and more readily, you'll see the improvement to the quality of the mind. So it's through learning and practicing the Eightfold Path that you will produce only wholesome Kamma. The way to eliminate and extinguish your unwholesome kamma is to produce only wholesome kamma through making wise decisions. So through producing only wholesome kamma, you're extinguishing all this old kamma. That's flushing the garden hose out, getting all that mud out of the garden hose by putting only fresh water into the garden hose, by you making wise decisions through the Eightfold Path, which are things like right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The Buddha is giving you these 8 dials to dial in closer and closer to produce wise decisions in your life. He doesn't tell you what to do or how to do it. He doesn't give you a decision tree of exactly what to do in any given situation, but he's teaching you about your mind and how to have the tools and the techniques to eradicate these pollutions, and then you will come up with the right decision in your life based on your own situation. And you might need to consult a teacher, but a Buddhist teacher isn't telling you what to do in your life. We're just teaching you the natural law of Kamma in one way or another, and then you make whatever decision's right for you, because only you know the variables 100%. So you need to clean up your kamma. You need to clean up the results of the decisions that you made in the past that were unwise. So let me give you some examples from my life of where I've needed to do this. So in the past, I used to be quite an angry, kind of hostile person at different times, because this is the way that I grew up. I grew up in a family that was quite angry and quite hostile. There are times where, my parents would be yelling and screaming at each other, or we would go out to a business and my mom would be yelling at the business and trying to get them to do things her way and kind of trying to fear them into doing things her way. And this is what I grew up with. And this is what I thought was supposed to be done. I conformed to what was going on around me as a child. This is what I grew up with. So that's the way I started making decisions to a certain extent in my life. So over the course of my life, there were times, of course, that I was peaceful and joyful with certain people, but there were times where I was bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive with certain people. And my wife was one of those. I've been with my wife now for about 16 years or so. And when we first got together, of course, we were all peaceful and loving and kind and warm, but there were different times where I was aggressive and bitter and harsh with her. And over time, we were together at this point that I'm describing to you now for about 11 years. And I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of being angry all the time. I need to do something different. And I started learning the teachings of the Buddha and started transforming my mind. And I started doing things differently. I started to be more loving and kind and compassionate and talking in more warm and gentle and friendly ways. But my wife, she was still talking bitter and harsh, because that's what I had done, because I had made all these unwise decisions to be bitter and harsh and hostile to her. Even though I had transformed my mind, she was still bitter and harsh and hostile with me. So there was about a year and a half or so where I had completely transformed my mind. I was no longer bitter and harsh and hostile to anybody around me, but I had to extinguish this unwholesome kamma. There was this old kamma that I had produced based on my unwise decisions in the past. So now, even though I was calm and peaceful and joyful, and I wasn't being harsh and bitter to anybody, including my wife, this unwholesome kamma was still coming back to me. And I even noticed my son was talking to his mom in unwise ways. He was being bitter and harsh to her, and sometimes too. So I had to clean this up. First, I had to start with my own mind. I had to clean up my own mind and train my own mind. But then I had to help my wife, and I needed to help my son to learn how to practice these teachings so that I could clean up my kamma. And now, 5-6 years later from that time, it took me a good year and a half to clean all that up. Now, in our house, there's never any arguments. There's never any hostility. There's never even an elevated voice. There's never an argument. Instead, we just have discussions. Of course, we disagree with each other sometimes, but we just sit down and talk about it, and we discuss it. We're never angry. We're never upset. We're never bitter. We're never sad or disappointed or frustrated or annoyed, but we had to all work towards that goal. And now, for that period of time, for a year and a half, when I was calm and peaceful and my wife was yelling and hollering at me in different situations, it was like she was picking up this rubber ball of anger and she was throwing it around the room. And in the past, what I would do is I would pick up that rubber ball and I would throw it around the room. And then she would pick it up and she would throw it around the room. And I would pick it up and I would throw it around the room. Next thing you know, we got all these rubber balls bouncing around of anger and hatred bouncing around the room. Well, I decided to do something different because I was interested in cleaning up this Kamma. When she picked up the rubber ball of anger and hatred and she threw it around the room, I would just watch it roll to the corner and it lost its energy. And I would just be calm and I would just smile. Sometimes I would just sit there and smile and listen to her. And I would say, anything else, dear? You wouldn't say anything else? And she would just yell and holler, anything else? Would you like to say anything else? And she would just yell and holler. And eventually she wore it out. She extinguished it. Other times, maybe I noticed a little bit of frustration starting to arise and I would walk away. I wouldn't stay in that situation. Or other times I wasn't even angry or I wasn't even frustrated. I would just notice that she was yelling and hollering and I would just walk away and teach her, whenever you're arguing, whenever you're yelling, I'm not going to be here. And if you'd like to talk with me, you're going to need to calm down. So I didn't teach her that while she was angry. I taught it to her through my actions, that when she was yelling and hollering, I would just walk away. And sometimes I would go outside, get on my motorbike, go drive around for a little bit, and then come back, right? And then by the time I come back, she's nice and calm. Maybe I'd wait an hour or two, and I'd sit down and I'd talk to her. And I'd say, okay, what would you like to talk about? Are you more calm now? Right? Or sometimes I'd have to wait 2 or 3 days or a week before she would calm down. But over time, I was able to extinguish this Kamma that I had created based on my unwise decisions of being harsh and aggressive and hostile in the past. This is the way my family's mind was starting to conform to what I was doing. And I needed to teach my son how to also be loving and kind to his mom. So now they have a very loving and kind relationship too. They never argue or upset with each other either. But this all happens through learning the Eightfold Path and practicing it more and more. So you probably have certain relationships that are just completely loving and warm and kind and friendly, and it's just going wonderfully for you. But then you have other relationships that are probably more difficult for you. This is because you have craving in those relationships. You have attachment. You're wanting this person to be a certain way. And when they're that way, you're happy. But when they don't do things your way, you're unhappy. This is the anger arising based on your craving. And because you have a lack of wisdom, you have this unknowing of true reality. This is just going to keep happening until you train your mind otherwise. So you're going to need to, if you like, to improve your life and improve your relationships, is to train your own mind. That's where it starts. The same thing happened. I can give you another example with my mom. Growing up, I had a lot of difficulties with my mom, a lot of resentfulness with my mom because of things that happened in our childhood. And even in my early adulthood, we had this very turbulent relationship that oftentimes she would be bitter and harsh with me and I would be bitter and harsh with her. But once again, I decided to start doing something different. And then when we would talk on the phone and my mom would be bitter and harsh with me, I wouldn't be bitter and harsh back. Sometimes I would say, Mom, our relationship is too important to me to be bitter and harsh to you. I know in the past I've been that way, but I'm choosing to no longer do that. I'm going to get off the phone and let you think about what it is that you just said, and we'll talk another time, Mom. I love you. And we would get off the phone. And then I'd wait 3 months or 6 months and we'd be talking again and everything would be just fine. And then at some point, maybe a few weeks later or a few months later, she'd be bitter and harsh again, and I would do something similar. And then over time, she extinguished her anger because I was no longer angry with her. And by the time she died, everything was wonderful in our relationship. We didn't have any problems whatsoever. And when she died, we just said goodbye, essentially. There was no grief on my part. There was no grief on her part. We completely understood each other and we didn't have any animosity toward each other anymore. So you can get to this point in your relationships if you train your mind and you understand how to do that. And it's the Eightfold Path that's going to help you to be able to extinguish this unwholesome Kamma that you've created in the past. So if you continue to blame other people for what you're experiencing, you'll never fix it. But if you accept responsibility and see that you can change the condition of your mind and you can improve, then you can actually get to something better than what you're experiencing right now. You can get to the point where all your relationships are completely fulfilling, completely satisfying. You can conduct life with ease and smoothness rather than having struggles and difficulties constantly throughout your life. You will have struggles and challenges from this point forward, but by the time you get to enlightenment, you will clean up all that stuff. But between now and then, there's certain wisdom that you're going to need. It's not a matter of learning something in a 1-hour class or 2-hour class and snapping your fingers and instantly changing and transforming. There needs to be that gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So let me see if you guys have any questions on extinguishing your unwholesome karma. Again, you can ask questions here at the temple or online. You're welcome to ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, looks like Bruce is following up here. He says, if I understand correctly, after one transforms their mind by practicing the teachings, if others in the world still treat us unwholesomely, that can be attributed to our past karma that is still running its course. Yes. And then in the present moment, you get to make decisions about what your new karma is going to be. So for example, in this transformation that I'm talking about, in a relationship with my wife and my mom, I'm committed to this relationship. So I work to improve it and get it to a point where everything's going just fine in our relationship. But there's relationships that are currently in your life, and there were relationships that were in my life that I had to end, that there was too much anger, there was too much hostility, either on my part or the other person's part, and I wasn't committed to the relationship, and it just made sense to move on from the relationship, just to move on. I didn't need to tell the person that I was ending the relationship necessarily, I just chose to move on. So there's certain relationships that are in your life right now that you might just choose to move on from, and that's one of the ways to clean up your karma, is just move on from that relationship, because there's not enough time, there's not enough dedication and commitment to sorting it out, either on your part or their part. And then there's a second type of relationship that you have right now that you're having challenges and difficulties in, that you're committed to, and you will like to do the work, and you think that they might do the work too, potentially, and you'll sort that relationship out over a number of years. But then there's a third category of relationships. As you transform your mind and you start being more loving and kind, practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, these are new relationships that you will create, that you'll only ever be loving and kind in those relationships. And now that's all that will ever come back to you, that you'll only ever be loving and kind, polite and respectful. And that's all that will ever come back to you in those relationships. You might even have some of those relationships right now. So there's 3 types of relationships that you might have. Some that you're having right now that are quite challenging and difficult, that you're not committed to, and you'll just choose to move on from. And then there's certain relationships you have now that are challenged, that you have difficulties in, that you're committed to, that you're going to resolve and you're going to fix. And then there's a third type of relationship that are completely new relationships that you haven't even created yet. You might not have even met those people yet. But now, as you get on the path to enlightenment and you transform your mind, you'll only ever be loving and kind with those individuals, because they're new relationships that you're creating, and you'll understand these teachings, and now your relationships can really blossom. So these are the 3 types of relationships that you might encounter, and that you have right now, and that you will create in the future. And this is how you gradually clean up your karma. You're ending certain relationships and moving on. You're cleaning up certain relationships that you have. And then new relationships, you'll only ever be loving and kind in them. And then you get to a point where you've cleaned up your life. You've cleaned up your karma. You've extinguished all your unwholesome karma from the past, this old karma, by creating only new karma with your current relationships and new relationships. Okay, so I've got one more thing to share with you guys, which is talking about the laws of society. Oftentimes when I teach the natural law of Kamma, somebody might say, well, hold on a second. There's this guy that, they found blood in his car, blood in his house. He had a, bloody footprint at a murder scene, but he was found not guilty at court. That's not getting his Kamma. He's, escaped his unwholesome karma. He ran and hid from it, or she ran and hid from it. This isn't actually true. So let me help you understand laws of society. Laws of society are created, maintained, and enforced by human beings. Okay, so these laws are imperfect. They can't be administered fairly. While we should always aspire to administer laws as fairly as possible, we need to understand, as human beings, it's impossible for us to do this completely fairly across the board, because these are laws of society that are created, maintained, and enforced by human beings. So that's why we essentially have these things that are sometimes where somebody's found not guilty, even though there's a bloody footprint or a bloody murder weapon with their fingerprints on it or what have you. But it's important to understand that the laws of society aren't 100% of the natural law of Kamma. They can be part of the natural law of Kamma, but it's not 100% the natural law of Kamma. So an individual, keeping with this same example, who is maybe been found not guilty in a court of law based on laws of society, but everybody knows that this person most likely committed this murder based on all this evidence, they're still experiencing their Kamma. It's just that they didn't go to jail necessarily in that particular situation. But there's other things that are related to their Kamma than just going to jail. Going to jail isn't their ultimate Kamma. There's other things that they're experiencing as well, which I've got some examples here. Is this individual would end up having a bad reputation in the community. They would potentially have sickness or disease. There would be physical or mental pain that they experience. They can have a shorter lifespan. They can get killed themselves. This hostility, aggression that they have that caused them to kill, if they actually killed somebody, it's not going to just disappear because they were found not guilty in a court of law. That hostility and aggression, that anger and hatred that's in their mind, they're going to have challenged relationships where they have fights and they may even be killed in other situations. So they're going to meet with the results of that harshness and hostility that they're putting out, not just for the killing, but in all their other relationships too. They're going to experience this harshness and hostility coming back to them, where they're going to have fights and maybe even be killed in some other situation. They can even experience this loss of income and loss of wealth, because with people knowing that this situation has occurred, they might be hesitant to give them a job. So they might not be able to acquire wealth or income very readily. They'll have difficulties in relationship. They'll have challenges and difficulties securing and progressing in their employment, securing housing, acquiring the basic necessities to sustain life. And they'll also experience discontentedness. There'll be a certain amount of guilt or shame or fear in their mind as part of what they chose to do. And there's rebirth, continuous rebirth, and the cycle of rebirth. There's 5 different realms that the Buddha taught. So an individual who chooses to murder, for example, just because they went to court and they were found not guilty, they can't escape that Kamma. They're going to experience the results of that Kamma. Whether it's a wise decision or unwise decision, they're going to experience the results of that. You can't run and hide from it. But if you're looking at the court and you're seeing a big court case, a big famous publicized court case that someone's found guilty or found not guilty, and you're looking at that as the ultimate end-all be-all Kamma, then you're not seeing the natural law of Kamma 100%, because there's other aspects that one is experiencing as a result of their decisions. It's not just whether they go to jail or not. There's other things that they're experiencing as a result of their decisions. So it's important to see this clearly, so that when somebody maybe you think is not guilty and they go to court and they're found guilty, right? In this situation, maybe somebody actually did not do this actual crime. There's people in jail today that didn't actually commit a crime, and they were found guilty, because our court system, our human laws are imperfect. There's plenty of people that we've seen that were exonerated through DNA or through other things, that went to jail. They were there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and ultimately they were discovered to be not guilty, because these laws are imperfect. They're human laws. But if you look at some of these cases, the individual might have been found guilty for that particular crime that they actually didn't do. But if you look at their past, they might have been doing other things that they weren't found guilty for. So let's just say I was put in jail for murder, and I actually didn't murder this person. And just say there was a couple of witnesses that blamed me for the murder, and they identified me as being the murderer, and I went to jail. Well, maybe before that, maybe I was beating people up, maybe I was selling drugs, maybe I did murder somebody else, and I didn't even get caught for it, right? But this one particular murder that I was found guilty for, I ended up going to jail for. So there's some people that you'll see that experience for as well. That even though they're found guilty and they go to jail and they didn't actually do the crime, they were doing other things prior to that where they weren't actually getting caught for them, but they ended up going to jail for this one particular crime that they didn't actually do. So this is still an individual's Kamma, the results of their decisions. So you can see that the natural law of Kamma is beyond the human laws, that the natural law of Kamma is a law that's functioning at a much higher level than human laws. So for example, it's legal to go work at a liquor store and sell alcohol, right? But if you look at the teachings of the Buddha, it's actually unwise to work at a liquor store. These places get robbed, people get beat up and murdered in these situations. You can deal with clientele that are intoxicated, and it can be a very challenging job to work in that kind of environment. So if you choose to work in that environment, it's up to you, it's your choice. But if you understand the natural law of Kamma, even though it's legal by human laws to work at a liquor store, for example, you can see that it would be pretty unwise to work in that environment, in that situation. But whether you choose to do it or not is up to you. So the natural law of Kamma is a much higher law than the human laws. If you learn and practice the natural law of Kamma, you'll never have any problems with the human laws because you're going to be functioning at a much higher level than what any government has ever put together, because a government can't put together laws that are going to be functioning in the same way as the natural law of Kamma. Do you guys have any questions on this particular aspect of the natural law of Kamma, talking about the laws of society? No? Okay. Let me see if we have anything online here. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions here. Let me just check Facebook or Zoom for a second. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'll do then is just in class here by thanking you guys for coming to decide to learn the teachings of the Buddha, and also welcome you and invite you to come back to learn more if you'd like to learn more. We have classes on Sunday and Wednesday here, which are part of the group learning program. We also have classes on Saturday, which is part of our Pali Canon and English study group. This is a bit of a different style of learning where you're learning the original words of the Buddha more in like a study group format, where this is more of like a traditional style of learning where I'm teaching and using visual aids to help you. All of these programs are guided by this book series that you can actually get online by downloading from our website. You can take the books and go print them if you like, or you can get printed copies here at the temple, or you can get them online through Amazon. So a combination of reading, coming to class, getting personal guidance, you can gradually train your mind and awaken more and more to this wisdom. And then you can see that the condition of the mind becomes more peaceful and joyful as you train your mind to awaken to the wisdom of the Buddha. In our next class, which is next Sunday, I'm going to be teaching chapter 10 in volume 1, which is titled, What is Merit? This is a particular type of wholesome Kamma that you need to learn and understand in order to be able to make your way towards enlightenment. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching loving kindness meditation, guiding you guys in loving kindness meditation, because in order to practice loving kindness and eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will and produce wholesome Kamma, you need to know how to practice loving kindness meditation. So we did breathing mindfulness meditation together today, but on Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching loving kindness meditation, which is a different form of meditation that you need in order to eliminate the anger, hatred, ill will, and the lesser versions like frustration, irritation, annoyance, and things like that. And then also on Wednesday, it's kind of an open question day where I just kind of open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to any aspect of the path to enlightenment. And you can even ask those in questions or classes like this as well. But that particular class, I kind of teach just a little bit of meditation and then just open up to any and all questions that you guys have. So thank you all for joining, whether you're here at the temple or you're online. Thank you all for deciding that today is a day that you'd like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me either here in Chiang Mai or online, and I'll be able to help you. So have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee Kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.